There's an intrinsic want to follow the hero in the stories that we tell. There are, of course, some exceptions to this, such as Thanos, who we can sympathize with and at some points even understand where he's coming from. Things get much more interesting when the villains of these stories are meant to be our heroes. This is why the trope of having an evil Superman is so polarizing. But more interesting than both of these is when our heroes get corrupted and twisted into something ultimately unrecognizable from what they started as. We can see this in a ton of media in characters like Eren Yeager, Anakin Skywalker, and Wanda Maximoff, but none capture the passive corruption of our own morals better than 7 to Eternity by Rick Remender. I've been looking for an opportunity to talk about 7 to Eternity for a while. This is by far the best comic that I've ever read, and everything about it, from the art to the story to the length of this series, is perfect. I seriously can't speak enough praise over this series, so I was super excited to make this video. It did take me a while to figure out what exactly I wanted to say about the series because there's so much that it succeeds in saying. There are themes of selfishness, government control, family, and death, but none of these themes are as present as the theme of identity. Specifically when it pertains to how moving the line of morality starts the unavoidable entropy of ourselves. 7 to Eternity is, above all, a cautionary tale about one man and his journey to save his family through increasingly horrid means until he can no longer recognize the man he's become. Or maybe it's who he was all along. Real quick, before I start talking about the series, I'm gonna spoil almost the entire series. There are a lot of details I left out, but if you do want to read this, and I think it's 100% worth reading, pause the video now and come back after you've read it. But if not, let's start talking. Adam Osidis lives with his family on the outskirts of a crumbling civilization that is led by the Mud King, the god of whispers, Garl's Slum. Both Garls and Adam are Mosok, people who show certain powers that are linked to an otherworldly place called the Well, which also acts as sort of an afterlife in the comic, but it's not explicitly said, really. The world, more or less, in this comic is built on assumptions of the reader. There's a lot that is left unsaid. Anyway, Mosok's powers could be casting illusions such as the character Goblin, to being able to see through the eyes and read the minds of people who you make a deal with. The latter power is the one that Garls has, which makes him one of the most interesting characters next to Adam himself. Adam's Mosok power is that he can commune with the dead. This allows him to use his ancestors' blood in the form of bullets called nails, while the gun is called the hammer. Adam, over the course of the comic, grows to be spiteful towards his father because of his family's situation. At the start of the comic, however, Adam did care for his father until the very end of his father's life. Within the first issue of the comic, we can see Adam's father die at the hands of the Piper, who's one of Garls' children. Adam's father, Zeb, was friends with Garls and is the only person to turn down his offer. As a result, the Mud King made sure to destroy his entire family's reputation, which is why the Osidis family has the mantra placed on them of having betrayal in their blood. Zeb's death is what kickstarts Adam to go on a journey to go find the God of Whispers and hear his offer, which is something that Zeb explicitly tells him not to do. There's an adage that is extremely important in terms of the comic. This adage is trust no living thing. The reason that this is so important is because the God of Whispers has influence in each household. You never know who to trust and who is Garls. Adam would have never listened to the God of Whispers' offer because, as Zeb would say, the rotting of all principles began with placing a single foot on the road to compromise. Hearing the offer would start the rot of Adam. Adam gets to Garls by the end of the first issue, but he has one card up his sleeve. Adam's dying. there is a sickness within him that we can see progress up until the very end of the comic. This same sickness also took his brother's life due to his father's unwillingness to take the Mud King's offer. After Adam gets to Garls, the meeting is ambushed by the last Mosok to stand in opposition of him. Adam ends up joining these other Mosok in hopes to sever the God of Whispers from all who've heard his offer. Now, these Mosok don't know that Adam's fallen victim to Garl's power. Even though he didn't take the offer, the whispers were heard. One night, they're camping out and Adam is keeping watch. Now, going with some admittedly cliché tropes, Adam falls asleep and Garls escapes. Well, maybe escapes isn't the right word. He unchains himself and uses the opportunity to kill one of the Mosok for talking about Garls' mother, and then lets himself get captured again. This is where the first volume ends, and it's so important that it ends with Garls letting himself get captured, because it's the first time that we really see that Garls might be in a lot more control than he let on. So, before I continue talking, I do want to give one more chance to pause the video and read this. If this sounded interesting to you, go read it. It is an amazing series. But now, let's move on to the second volume. The second volume is a lot more impactful towards the story and Adam's skewed sense of identity. While his goal is to kill the king, or god, or man, or whatever Garls is, he still has a long way to go and a lot to come to terms with before he does. The ending to the second volume is where I would say Adam starts his complete descent into compromise and death. While this sickness is still taking root deep in his lungs, the reality that he's running out of time really starts setting in. The group of Mosok, with Adam included, gets separated in a swamp that has the souls of all the goblins within. This is where we find out why Goblin is the last goblin alive. It was all Garls. Garls had his son, the Piper, use his Mosok gift to lead all of the goblins into the swamp. The swamp itself is given little explanation besides the fact that it traps the souls of those who die, so they can't go to the well. During the fight, Adam, Garls, and a girl named Javalia fall down a hill, and Adam is presented with a choice. Save Javalia, his childhood friend, and a girl he loves deeply, or save Garls, the god of whispers who has ravaged the land with his control. Now, Adam would have instantly chose Javalia, but the Mud King dies, and everyone who's heard his offer dies with him. This, of course, includes Adam. Adam chooses to save Garls, justifying his choice by all of the lives he has to save by sparing him. Adam says at this moment that this is the truth of my character, the truth about what I really wanted. Adam wants to live and to make sure his family is going to survive, but both of those things require Garls survive as well. This is really when we see Adam start to realize that his own goals are something he does not want to see. He says, "Everything we do for a reason. It's just not often we're aware what that is. Because if we were, we might have to change how we think about ourselves." The second half of Volume 2 is relatively unimportant when studying Adam's character. It's still very good, bearing some questionable artwork, but focuses on the other Mosok that Adam started his journey with, and Katie, his oldest child, who's gone out looking for him. There is something 100% worth talking about in the last issue of the volume when we switch from the Mosok back to Adam and Garls. At the very end of the volume, Garls summons Zeb, using a nail in order to save Adam from the White Lady. There's an extremely emotional moment when Zeb looks at Adam and uses his power to see that Adam has heard the whispers. He is inhabited. Adam is left on a cliff, yelling that he's dying and has no choice but to hear the offer. It is important to note that Adam gets the White Lady's lantern after the scene because of its prominence in the next volume, but for the second volume, it's largely unimportant. Now, this moment between Adam and his father is, in my opinion, where Adam really starts changing. While yes, hearing the offer is the definitive point where he starts his metamorphosis, this is a much more impactful moment towards his overall character. Zeb is the one man who held him back from compromise, and now he's gone. Adam is alone, and no one is there to stand in his way from completely changing. The third volume takes place in a city that Garls has damned to the sky called Skad. If anyone from the city touches the ground, they die, a result of a deal Garls made with the king's wife. Immediately at the start of this volume, we notice that Adam starts to look at Garls more like a friend than the evil god Zeb made him out to be. It's not long that Garls gets captured by envoys of Volmer, the leader of the city in the sky, who also happens to be Garls' other son. This leaves Adam alone to save him, so Adam carves a bloody path through the city, all in an effort to save Garls. Adam has left everything and even says, "I left behind the only people who cared about me in the world to serve the Mud King." Adam by this point is almost unable to run because of the sickness that's taking his life, and the idea that he might never see his family again starts to really set in. Adam is shortly captured by Volmer's guards, and Volmer ends up taking Adam away from Garls to ask Adam to convince Garls to make a deal with Volmer. Adam lets slip that he only has days left, and Volmer realizes that his words are not the truth. Adam is then sentenced to death by walking off the side of the city. As Adam's standing on the plank, he can't help but think of his family. Naval and his kids, they all need him, and he failed. Just before he takes one final step to his death, the city falls under siege. The Piper is here, and he's using a nearby city's residents to bomb Skad. Adam uses this opportunity to escape. He runs to find Garls, and he does, but they get separated shortly after, and Adam reaches out to the lantern that he took from the White Lady. As he reaches for it, the lantern speaks to him. It's the souls that he could hear from his Mosok power. The lantern says, "Trust no living thing, including yourself." Adam, at this point, gets sent to the well, where the librarian gives him the power of every soul that is and was. The librarian hands him a hammer and an infinite nail, and Adam is sent back to Skad. Garls is seconds away from being killed at this point by Volmer, and Adam makes the biggest choice he's made so far. He raises his hammer toward the sky and pulls the trigger. There's an explosion of pink light, and the city starts crumbling, descending to the ground. Adam damns every citizen of Skad because Garls was going to die, because this is considered to be a mercy. Adam says that he killed Skad for his family and all of the families who have heard the whispers. After all, why should people be forced to suffer for compromising when they don't have a choice? The fourth and final volume starts a bit after the third leaves off. Adam killed a city, and now he can't breathe. He's unable to walk, and Garls has to drag him on a cloth. Eventually, they do get to the Springs of Zal, where Adam can be healed and where he can borrow more time with his family. He walks up to the door to the springs and is asked a question by a creature called the Asker. The Asker asks why Adam wants eternal life, and Adam takes some time to make sure he knew why. Adam looks up and says, "To protect my family." The Asker then looks at Adam. Adam was lying. There is no more salvation from the springs, and Adam is going to die in a realm of smoke and mirrors with no hope of seeing his family again. This in itself is a harrowing moment where Adam's whole goal gets shattered. If he is not doing this for his family, then what the hell is he doing it for? The springs are then besieged by the Piper, and Adam takes the opportunity to return to the doors to the springs. By this point, Garls is dying, and his millions of servants along with him. Adam gets to the Asker and says he knows why he wants eternal life now. I want it for myself. He points his hammer at the Asker and pulls the trigger, killing him just as the Mosok, along with his oldest child Katie, walk in. Now, there are two more issues that I didn't talk about, but they're largely unimportant to studying Adam's character, besides the big detail that Adam ascends to be the new god of Zal. Where Garls was the god of whispers, Adam is the god of rot. The idea of Adam being the god of rot is not directly stated within the comic, but it's extremely fitting towards his overall journey. Adam, through all of his compromise, acts completely differently to how he acted at the beginning, and his rot spreads and destroys everything around him. He has this constant rationalization of what he does, and looking back, all of it can be brought to the idea of him doing what he does for himself. People are naturally selfish, but we can justify our own selfishness as helping others. Adam kills cities under the guise of saving all of the Mud King's servants, something that he would never done at the very start before he was taken by the Whispers. He even planned on killing Garls because, well, this isn't his war, and Adam hadn't heard any offer yet. Compromise is very dangerous if not kept in check. This is the same reason that superheroes have the do not kill rule. If that line gets pushed once, it can never go back, and crossing it again seems a lot less impactful. That being said, compromise is also inevitable. Yes, there's always a choice, but to say that means that the choices we have to make are simple. Who we are today is never going to be who we were yesterday, and that's okay. Well, it's okay if you aren't bombing cities like Adam. The point is, compromise is a rot that we cannot avoid, and much like Adam in the beginning, it is those around us that keep us good. It's when we're left alone we can truly see who we are.